The storm hit without warning, rain slamming against the diner windows like the sky was grieving. Owen Mercer, an exhausted FBI agent, sat alone with a cup of cold coffee until the door burst open. A woman stumbled in, soaked, trembling, clutching a baby to her chest. Her clothes were torn, her face drained of color. When the waitress asked what she needed, she whispered so softly the storm nearly swallowed it. "Help. Please." Owen stood instantly. Something in her eyes, fear, exhaustion, a silent cry for mercy, pulled him from his seat. He didn't know her. He didn't know the danger behind her. But he knew God sometimes sends people into our path for a reason. If you believe compassion still changes lives, please like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of hope and courage. The rain didn't just fall that night. It attacked. It hammered the diner windows in violent sheets, as if the sky was trying to erase something it could never wash clean. Inside, neon light flickered across empty booths, casting tired red shadows over a place built for warmth, now holding its breath. Owen Mercer sat alone in the corner booth. His black tactical jacket still shimmered with rain. Gray-blue eyes, sharp, exhausted, always watching, tracked the storm like it was a threat with a pulse. At his feet, Shadow slept lightly. A 4-year-old German shepherd, sable-coated, powerful, disciplined. But even in rest, his ears remained alert, like he was listening for someone only he could sense. Owen lifted his coffee, told himself the quiet was good, told himself quiet meant nobody was dying tonight. And then the door exploded open. A blast of cold air and water surged inside. For a second, there was only a silhouette in the doorway, shaking, drenched, clinging to something small. Then the light revealed her. A young woman, mid-20s, soaked to the bone. Long brown hair plastered to her pale face, eyes dark, swollen with fear, staring as if she'd run from the end of the world. In her arms, a baby, 7 months old, wrapped in a thin cream-colored blanket, chest rising in shallow, broken breaths. She stumbled forward. 2 steps. 3. And when she met Owen's gaze, her voice cracked apart. "Please, don't let him find me." Silence shattered. Shadow rose instantly, ears forward, muscles taut. Owen stood just as fast, his body moving long before his mind did. The woman's hands trembled violently. Her hoodie was torn at the sleeves. A bruise darkened her left arm, blooming under wet fabric. But it was the baby, tiny, fragile, that made Owen's chest tighten. The child whimpered, a sound thin enough to split the heart. Shadow moved first. He walked to her with slow, deliberate steps and gently nudged his nose against the baby's hand. A miracle happened. The baby's breathing steadied. The tiny fingers curled into Shadow's fur. The crying softened, then faded altogether. The woman froze. Then she crumbled. He never calms when he's scared," she whispered, tears blending with rain on her cheeks. "Never." Owen slipped off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders. It dwarfed her, but she pulled it close, as if clinging to a lifeline. "You're safe right now," he said quietly. "Sit. Breathe." She slid into the booth, clutching the child so tightly it seemed her arms might break. Shadow sat beside her, guarding her like she was already part of his pack. Owen took the seat across. His scar caught the neon glow, a thin white reminder of a failure he never could bury. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated. Then, "Lena. Lena Ward." "And him?" Her voice softened. "Eli. He's all I have." She stroked the baby's cheek, and for a second, her face cracked open with both love and terror. Owen leaned closer. He looks cold. Let me check. No. Her voice was sharp, defensive, primal. Shadow's ears twitched, but he didn't react aggressively. He understood. She wasn't fighting Owen. She was fighting fear. I'm sorry, she whispered, swallowing hard. I can't lose him. You won't, Owen replied. Not tonight. She loosened the blanket just enough for him to see the baby's fragile breathing, weak but safe. For now. That was when Owen noticed something odd. A small bulge in the front pocket of the baby's onesie. What's that? He asked. In his pocket. Lena blinked in confusion. There's nothing. Her fingers slipped inside the pocket. They brushed something stiff. She pulled out a tiny folded scrap of paper. I didn't put this there. Owen extended a hand, and she gave it to him. He unfolded it slowly. Inside was a series of numbers, symbols, coordinates, a coded pattern, whatever it was. It didn't belong in the pocket of a 7-month-old child. You recognize it, Lena said, voice trembling. Owen didn't answer, but his eyes did. Before he could speak, Shadow let out a low, rumbling growl. Not loud, not frantic, just certain. His amber gaze locked onto the door. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with tired eyes, peeked over the counter. You folks okay back there? She called, trying to sound braver than she felt. We're fine, Owen replied. But his hand moved closer to his holster. Shadow didn't blink. The rain pounded harder, as if trying to drown what Shadow sensed. Then came the twist in the air so small only a dog would catch it. Shadow stepped forward and sniffed the crack beneath the door and froze. Not with fear, with recognition. Something, or someone, had been there. Long enough to leave a scent, close enough to watch, and recent enough that Shadow still felt the echo of it. Owen's pulse stiffened. He lowered his voice. Lena, who exactly is chasing you? Her breath hitched. Her eyes drifted to the door, to the windows, to the baby, as if danger lived in every reflection. If I tell you, she whispered, you'll think I'm insane. Try me. She clutched Eli tighter, pulling the child into her chest as though shielding him from the memory itself. He knows where I go, she said. Her voice dropped to a shivering thread. He knows what I'm thinking, where I'll hide, where I feel safe. Her eyes met Owen's. He knows before I move. Shadow's growl returned, quieter, darker. Lena inhaled, her voice breaking as she spoke the final truth. He knows where I'll run, before I even run. If you believe that even in life's darkest storms, God can still send the right protector at the right moment, man or dog. Please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform, so more people can witness stories of faith, courage, and quiet miracles. The drive to the field office was silent in a way that felt too deliberate, as if every sound had stepped back to make room for the fear crawling around Lena's mind. Rain streamed along the SUV windows, thin and crooked, like the world couldn't decide whether to hold itself together or fall apart entirely. Owen kept one hand on the wheel and the other resting near the console, close enough to his holstered weapon that he could draw it without thinking. His jaw remained locked, the muscles ticking in a steady, disciplined rhythm. Shadow sat upright in the back beside Lena and Eli, his sable coat damp from the night, his amber eyes watching the reflections that slid across the glass. Every few seconds, the dog leaned forward and pressed his nose gently to the baby's blanket, checking, measuring, reassuring himself that Eli was still breathing evenly. The gesture made something in Lena soften for a beat before tightening again. She held Eli close, whispering nothing words. Syllables of comfort she didn't fully hear herself speak. Her wet hair clung to her cheeks, and the bruises along her forearm darkened with the warmth of the SUV, revealing patterns of fingers that had not left her gently. She stared at the scrunched scrap of coated paper in Owen's hand, her chest rising in a thin, uneven breath. "Are we safe now?" she asked, though she already feared the answer. "Safer," Owen replied, his tone low and steady. "For the moment?" The field office appeared through the storm after another block, its floodlights cutting through the darkness like watchful, unblinking eyes. The building itself was all sharp angles and thick glass, cold, sterile, the opposite of the trembling warmth of the diner. Once inside, the fluorescent lights washed over them. A security agent at the front desk looked up. Middle-aged, sandy hair, deep-set eyes that suggested he'd seen enough to know when something wasn't routine. His nameplate read, "Agent Holden," and he gave Owen a short nod. "Late night?" he asked, but his gaze was already drifting to Lena's torn clothing and the baby in her arms. Owen replied simply, "Need medical and a secure room." Holden didn't question it. He wasn't the type. A man carried in his walk the weight of long service, efficient, silent, and loyal to the rules he believed in. He guided them down the hallway, his boots making soft thuds against the dull floor tile. Lena followed, hugging Eli tightly. Shadow stayed close at her heel, step for step, head angled forward in silent vigilance. The medical bay was warmer. A young medic, Dr. Marissa Hale, slight in stature with copper hair and soft hazel eyes, immediately approached. She wore navy scrubs and carried herself with gentle alertness, the kind born from treating more trauma victims than illnesses. "Let me take a look at the little one," she said, her voice light but steady. Lena hesitated. Owen placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "She's good," he murmured. "She'll take care of him." Reluctantly, Lena loosened her grip. Dr. Hale examined Eli, her brows furrowing as she listened to his breathing. "He's stressed," she said. "Body tension, shallow respiration patterns. Not from illness, more like he's been under prolonged adrenaline." Lena's breath shuddered. He almost stopped breathing earlier, when we were running." Dr. Hale paused, her expression softening but marked with concern. "He's stable for now, but he needs warmth and rest. So do you." She turned to inspect Lena's bruised arm, her fingers gentle. "You've been grabbed hard. Recently?" Lena looked away. "He doesn't like when I try to leave." Owen's eyes hardened. Shadow stood between them and the open doorway, ears twitching. The dog's posture wasn't aggressive, just alert, guarded, miserably certain the night wasn't done with them. When the examinations were done, Holden led them to a small interview room. A table, 4 chairs, bright overhead lights, nothing on the walls but the faint hum of air vents. Lena sat with Eli in her lap, wrapped in a fresh blanket. Owen remained standing, studying the coated scrap of paper under the lamp's glare. On the screen before him, a tech agent uploaded the digits into the encrypted FBI system. The lines of characters flickered across the monitor, then stilled, then rearranged. The algorithm struggled to categorize it. The tech agent, a thin older man with silver-framed glasses named Riley Keene, leaned closer, adjusting the bridge of his glasses. Keene was known in the office for being brilliant and slightly eccentric, the kind of man whose hair always looked like he'd run his hands through it too many times while thinking faster than the world around him. "This," he murmured, "this looks like an old federal cipher. Outdated, obscure, Why would anyone use something this archaic? Owen's voice was clipped. Can you decrypt it? Working on it. Keene typed quickly. The lines of code responded sluggishly, like someone pulling secrets from the bottom of a frozen lake. Lena shifted in her chair. I told you. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it was on him. Owen studied her face. The exhaustion. The fear. But under both, an unspoken knowledge she hadn't yet found words for. Lena, he said quietly. Someone didn't hide this in his pocket by accident. Her eyes darkened. I know. Shadow lifted his head suddenly. His ears pricked, his muscles tensed. He stared directly at the mirror on the wall. Not the door, not the hallway. The mirror. His low growl vibrated through the room. Lena stiffened. Owen turned, eyes narrowing. The mirror was supposed to be a simple reflective panel. But to Shadow, it wasn't. Something on the other side, or something unseen, had registered as wrong. And dogs do not lie. Keene's voice broke the silence. Got something. The screen flashed, then froze. A bold message filled the center. Access restricted. Level Omega clearance required. Owen's expression sharpened. Omega? That level hasn't been active for 7 years, Keene finished. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his jaw. This is tied to a project that was shut down a long time ago, permanently. Lena swallowed hard. What kind of project? Keene hesitated, choosing his words. A behavioral prediction system, high risk, controversial, meant to analyze patterns, fear, preference, routines, then predict human decisions before they were made. He adjusted his glasses, troubled. 3 people had access to its core encryption keys, all deceased. Lena's face drained of color. Then how did this end up on my son? Owen didn't answer. Shadow moved closer to Lena, bumping his nose into her leg, as if sensing her panic. She stroked his fur instinctively. The baby stirred slightly, but didn't cry. Keene tried another command on the console, then another. The system refused. Finally, after a long pause, the monitor blinked red. Access denied. Project terminated. Dead. Buried. Yet here it was, in a baby's pocket. Owen exhaled slowly, his pulse tightening. He looked at Eli. So small, so new to the world, the last person who should have carried the weight of old government ghosts. Why would someone hide this on a child? Owen murmured. Why bring a dead project back through a 7-month-old? His eyes met Lena's. Hers were wide, shining with fear and confusion and something else. Shame, maybe, for not knowing more. I told you, she whispered, clutching Eli closer. I don't understand any of it. I just ran. Owen opened his mouth to speak, but Shadow suddenly nudged his leg and looked toward the door, ears pinned, breath slow, muscles tense. Alert again, watching something they couldn't see. Owen's hand instinctively drifted near his weapon. Lena trembled. Is he here? Did he follow us? Shadow's picking up something, Owen said. But not here, not yet. Behind them, the monitor flickered again, for just a breath, like a pulse, a ghost of data, a whisper of movement inside a system that should have been sealed for good. Owen's stomach tightened. This project was supposed to be gone, he said. So why is it still breathing? He looked at Eli, fragile, innocent, unaware, and wondered what, exactly, he was now protecting. If you believe that even in moments of fear, God sends the right guardian, human or canine, to stand in the way of darkness, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform for more stories of faith, hope, and quiet miracles. The interview room felt smaller now. as if the walls absorbed every trembling breath Lena took. A soft hum from the overhead lights vibrated through the table, steady and indifferent to the unraveling story she carried in her chest. Eli slept against her shoulder, his tiny body rising in delicate rhythms beneath the warm blanket Dr. Hale had provided. But even in sleep, he twitched faintly, a leftover echo of a fear too large for someone so new to the world. Owen stood at the corner of the room, arms folded, scar above his eyebrow catching the cold light. He watched Lena with that quiet intensity he carried, never pushing, never demanding, simply waiting for truth to find its courage. Shadow sat beside him, posture alert but gentle, as if reading the gravity in Lena's silence. She finally lifted her gaze, and something broke open in her expression. Resignation mixed with the exhaustion of carrying a secret too heavy for one person. "You asked who I'm running from," she whispered. "But if I say his name out loud, it's like bringing him into the room." Owen replied softly, "Names don't summon demons, Lena. They only shine a light on them." Her breath hitched. "This one does." She looked down at Eli, smoothing the hair on his soft head, her fingers shaking more from memory than cold. "Before all this," she began, voice fragile, "I thought I had finally found someone who saw me, who wanted a life with me." She swallowed hard. His name was Miles Grant. Owen did not react outwardly, but Shadow's ears lifted slightly, registering the shift in tone. Lena continued, "He was brilliant, charming in the way people are when they've learned to study others, not to love them. He could read a room in seconds, and read me in less." Her brows pinched, recalling something bitter. "He knew how to make me feel safe, like someone finally understood how hard it was to raise a child alone." She tightened her hold on Eli. "He came into my life right when I was vulnerable, and he made sure I stayed that way." She described Miles slowly, as if peeling back layers she once tried to forget. His tall frame, always dressed in gray or white. His sharply angled face softened only by a calculated smile. His steel gray eyes that seemed beautiful until she realized they carried no warmth at all. "He spoke gently," she said, "but everything about him watched, calculated, chose." She looked up. I didn't see how dangerous that was until it was too late. Owen stepped closer, his voice lowering. "What happened the night you ran?" The question struck something deep. Lena's eyes glazed with a memory she wished she could bury. "It was raining," she said. "Not like tonight. Worse, sheets of water hitting the roof so loud I couldn't hear myself think." She clutched Eli tighter. I knew he was close. I could feel it. He had this way of knowing where I would go before I went there. Like he understood my fear better than I did. She blinked back tears. I grabbed Eli and ran into the storm. Barefoot at first. I didn't even grab a diaper bag. I just knew if I stayed another minute, he'd take my son. The next words trembled out. Halfway down the street, Eli stopped breathing. Owen stiffened. Even Shadow's tail froze mid-rest. "He went still," Lena whispered. I screamed for him to breathe, but the rain kept hitting his face. I covered him with my hand, but he didn't move. I kept running anyway, because stopping meant Miles would reach us. I couldn't lose Eli and then face him. Her voice cracked with remembered terror. Then, suddenly, Eli gasped, like something pushed breath back into him. Her eyes flicked toward the ceiling, as if thanking some unseen mercy. That's when I knew I had to keep going, no matter what. Owen felt something tighten in his chest. A familiar shadow of helplessness he remembered from the child he once failed to save. Shadow nuzzled Lena's knee gently, grounding her back into the room. She exhaled shakily. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, creased photograph. "There's something else," she murmured. "Something I don't understand." She handed it to Owen. It was worn from being held too many times, the edges soft, the center dampened by rain and sweat. The image showed Lena standing beneath the overhang of a building, rain streaking behind her. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was the message scrawled on the back. "If you read this, run. M." Owen flipped the photograph over again. "M. Miles?" "No," Lena said immediately. "That's not his handwriting. He doesn't write like this. He prints everything, clean, controlled. This—" Her breath trembled. "This looks rushed, terrified, like someone trying to warn me." Owen looked at the picture again, narrowing his eyes. Something faint in the corner caught his attention. A shadow. No, shadow. His dog. A German shepherd stood partly blurred in the corner of the frame, identical posture, identical markings, identical harness shape. But the timestamp on the bottom edge was unmistakable. 6 months ago. Before Lena ever met Owen, before Owen's unit even rotated back into this district. Shadow was never there, Owen said quietly, glancing down at the dog. Shadow tilted his head, amber eyes studying the photo before emitting a soft, uncertain whine. Lena's voice trembled. "I've never seen you before tonight. But I had the photo. Miles showed it to me the day I escaped. He said someone had been following me long before I met him." Owen's pulse ticked faster. "Following you? Or warning you?" "I don't know," she whispered. Miles didn't explain. He just laughed when I asked, like he knew something about me that I didn't. Shadow suddenly stepped forward, placing one paw onto the photograph on the table. His eyes locked, not on Owen, not on Lena, but on the faint figure standing behind his own blurred image in the picture. A tall silhouette partially hidden by rain, a presence that did not belong to the moment. Shadow's ears flattened. His breathing changed. A low, uneasy rumble left his throat, the kind of sound dogs make when they recognize a scent memory too old to be present, too fresh to be forgotten. Lena wrapped her free arm protectively around Eli. "Why is he reacting like that?" Owen didn't answer, because he didn't know. Slowly, Owen turned the picture back around. Behind Shadow's figure was another shape, barely visible, blurred by rain, but unmistakably human. A man, shoulders hunched beneath a long coat, face obscured, watching, present, and yet out of place. Lena whispered, "He was there. He's always been there, hasn't he?" Owen looked at her, then at Eli, sleeping peacefully for the first time in hours. "Who gave this to you?" Lena closed her eyes. "Miles. The day I ran." He held it up and said, "Looks like someone else wants you gone before I do." Her voice cracked at the memory. I thought he was mocking me. But now, I don't know. Owen felt the weight of the photograph settle into him like a stone. The timestamp, the dog, the silhouette, the signature. Nothing aligned. Everything contradicted, which meant something deeper was happening. Something older than Lena's fear and more complex than Miles's cruelty. Shadow pressed his head against Owen's thigh, his body tense, as if asking for direction. Owen rested his hand gently on the dog's back. "We'll figure it out," he murmured. But his eyes drifted back to the faint figure in the rain, the man whose presence had lingered long before they ever stepped into this room. Lena wiped her cheeks with her sleeve. "Owen, tell me the truth. That thing behind your dog, is it someone you recognize?" He hesitated. For one breath. Two. Not yet, he said. But I will. The truth was harsher than he allowed himself to speak. Whatever was in that picture, whatever had been watching Lena, it wasn't Miles. And it wasn't Owen. But it had known both of them long before tonight. If you believe God sends warnings, protectors, and signs in the moments we least expect them, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform so more people can find strength through faith and quiet miracles. The tech lab at the field office felt unusually still tonight, almost breathless. The overhead lights hummed sharply, reflecting off polished floors and rows of monitors that usually buzzed with confidence. But now every screen held only uncertainty. Riley Keene stood hunched forward, silver-framed glasses slipping toward the tip of his nose, fingers darting across the keyboard with expert precision. Owen watched from behind him, arms braced against the table, jaw tight. Shadow sat beside him, still alert, amber eyes fixed on the image glowing across the wall. And on the far bench, Lena rocked Eli gently, eyes flicking between the photograph and Shadow's unshakable focus. Keene finally exhaled. Everything checks out. Compression patterns, metadata, light alignment. A beat. This photo isn't edited, not staged, not manipulated. Nothing about it is artificial. Owen's eyes narrowed at the image of Shadow, standing in pouring rain 6 months before they met Lena. "And the timestamp?" he asked. Keene pushed his glasses up. "Verified. Twice. It's real." Lena's voice trembled. But he wasn't there. He couldn't have been. Shadow stepped closer. Keene lifted the photo toward him. The shepherd leaned in, nose nearly brushing the glossy paper. Then inhaled sharply and released a low, rumbling whine. Not fear. Recognition. Lena pressed her hand to her mouth. He knows something. Owen knelt beside Shadow. "What is it, boy?" Shadow didn't look at him. He stared at the faint silhouette hidden behind his own figure in the image. The man in the rain. Shadow pressed his forehead to Owen's knee, something he only did in moments of deep instinct. Then he lifted his head toward the ceiling, as if tracking footsteps above them. Except there were none. Lena whispered, "Is he sensing someone watching us right now?" Owen didn't answer, because Shadow wasn't reacting to the present. He was reacting to a memory. To protect Lena and Eli, Owen moved them to a secured safe house. Rain hammered the roof as they arrived, thunder rolling like distant war drums. Owen swept the perimeter, checking locks and windows. Shadow trotted ahead, nose brushing corners, tail stiff, scanning each room with military precision. Lena sat on the old sofa, hugging Eli close. "He always finds me," she whispered. "He doesn't need to follow. He just knows." Owen didn't argue. He couldn't. His secure tablet buzzed. Emotion alert. He opened the camera feed. Rain washed across the image in silver sheets. But through the distortion stood a tall figure at the edge of the yard, unmoving, watching, for 5 minutes. Then, the silhouette stepped backward into the trees and vanished. Lena's breath cracked. "He's here." Shadow immediately began pacing the living room, nails clicking sharply on the floor. He sniffed the walls, the windows, the hallway. Restless, focused. "He's been here," Lena whispered. Owen didn't deny it. He pulled the coated paper from his pocket, laying it on the counter. "Lena, you said Miles always knew your next move." She nodded slowly. "Always. Like he could see inside my fear." Owen felt the Omega Project claw back into his thoughts. The behavioral prediction system that was supposed to have been erased. Shadow abruptly froze in the hallway. His ears rose, tail stiff, breath held midair. He stared at the basement door. Owen moved beside him. "What do you smell?" Shadow pressed against the door, nose twitching rapidly, recognizing something that did not belong. Owen typed the security code and opened the door. Darkness. Nothing but dust and stale air. Yet Shadow refused to move. "He thinks someone was down there," Lena whispered. Her voice thinned with dread. Shadow turned suddenly, growling toward the table. The photograph, which had been lying flat moments ago, fluttered to the floor. Owen picked it up. A new detail glistened beneath a smudge of water. Behind the first silhouette was another pair of feet, a second watcher, standing silently in the storm. Night deepened around the safe house. Owen sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through encrypted logs. Lena paced softly, Eli sleeping in her arms, her mind replaying every time Miles had known her next move. "It wasn't about me," she whispered, her voice cracked. "It was never about me." Owen looked up. "What do you mean?" Her eyes glistened. "He didn't track me. He predicted me." Shadow lifted his head in silent agreement. Owen's secure phone buzzed. A new message. No sender, no source. He opened it. A single line glowed on the screen. "The thing we want is not her, not the child, but what we hid inside the child." The room went still. Shadow growled. Lena choked on a breath. Owen felt the truth hit him like a blade. Eli wasn't just being hunted. He was carrying something the world wasn't meant to hold. If you believe God sends warnings and protectors in the darkest hours, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform for more stories of faith, courage, and quiet miracles. The safe house had grown quieter as dawn crept toward the windows, but the silence did nothing to steady the tremor in Lena's hands. She sat at the small kitchen table, eyes red and swollen, Eli sleeping on her shoulder with faint whimpers still catching in his breath. Owen stood near the counter, looking down at the coded paper again, as if repetition would force it to reveal more than it already had. Shadow lay between them, his massive frame stretched across the floor, head resting on his front paws, ears half lowered yet alert, watching both humans as if guarding the fragile thread keeping them upright. Lena finally broke the silence. "Why? Why would they hide something in my baby?" The words sounded ripped from her chest, not spoken. Owen lifted his gaze slowly. His gray-blue eyes softened, but only slightly. The softness of someone who had learned long ago that comfort and truth often collided. "We don't know that yet," he said. "The message could be a threat, a bluff, a way to frighten you." Lena shook her head. It worked. She leaned forward, burying her face into the blanket wrapped around Eli. What kind of monster uses a child? What could they possibly want in him? She swallowed hard. Is he sick? Is there something wrong with him? Did they put something inside him? Shadow rose quietly and pressed his warm head against Lena's leg, the weight of him steady, grounding. Lena's trembling fingers curled into his fur. Owen stepped closer, his voice low and firm, not harsh, but shaped by experience. "Listen to me. Eli's safe right now. He's breathing. He's warm. He's here. Nothing will happen to him." Lena lifted her red eyes. "You say that like you've said it to someone else before." The question hit a part of him he kept buried. He inhaled, slow, controlled. "Yes," he said. "I have." He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, elbows resting on his knees. Shadow stayed between them, listening with canine stillness. "There was a case," Owen said quietly. 3 years ago." His jaw tensed, but he kept going. "A boy, 8 years old. Wrong place, wrong time. I got there too late." He didn't blink, didn't look away. "He died in my hands while I was trying to stop the bleeding." Lena's breath caught. Owen looked down at his scarred knuckles, running a thumb across the faint trace of a healed cut, a small wound lost among invisible thousands. His mother screamed my name for weeks in the news, blamed me for not saving him. He swallowed. I didn't disagree with her. Lena whispered, I'm so sorry. He shook his head. Don't be. It wasn't your pain. But it shaped you, she said softly. It did. Shadow nudged Owen's leg, slow, gentle. The dog always seemed to know when the past resurfaced, like a bruise. Lena looked at both of them, voice trembling. I'm terrified of losing my son. Owen replied, I'm terrified of failing another child. The words fused into the space between them, forging something unspoken. Shadow let out a soft huff, then lay down with his head touching both their feet, an instinctive, silent acceptance of a new pack. A sudden shiver ran through Shadow. Not fear, recognition. He lifted his head sharply, eyes locking onto the window, as if something invisible had just passed by. Then he did something he never did. He placed his body between Lena, Eli, and the window, shoulders rigid, gaze fixed, breath deepening. Lena whispered, Shadow, what do you see? But the shepherd didn't move, didn't blink. It was as if he sensed a pattern, a presence, not in the world outside, but inside Lena's fear itself. Later that afternoon, the Bureau issued an urgent directive. They needed to identify the stalker, and to do that, they needed to draw him out. Owen didn't like it. Lena hated it, but the strategy was clear. Establish a safe zone nearby, controlled, monitored, designed to lure the hunter out of the shadows. The location chosen was a small public garden attached to a municipal building, closed to the public at this hour, surrounded by cameras, with agents hidden in every blind spot. The benches glistened with leftover rain, and the trees shimmered with droplets catching the pale afternoon light. Lena sat on a stone bench, Eli bundled in her arms. She wore Owen's heavier jacket, its sleeves long enough to cover her trembling hands. Her eyes kept darting from tree to tree, from shadow to shadow. Owen stood just behind her, slightly to the left. Close enough to intervene, far enough to avoid spooking the suspect if he appeared. Shadow sat between them, body leaning subtly against Lena's leg, staring outward like a sentinel. A voice crackled softly in Owen's earpiece. Zone clear. No movement yet. Another voice. Camera 4 picking up shifting shadows, but could be tree movement. Lena whispered, He won't fall for this. Owen answered, Your fear's the bait. She stiffened. My fear? It's how he tracks you. Not your feet, not your phone, not your trail. He paused, mind working through the patterns. He follows what scares you. She stared back at him, realization dawning slowly, painfully. He continued, You always turn left in a crisis. Lena blinked. How do you? You carry Eli on your left side. Her eyes widened. You avoid the sound of truck engines. Her breath caught. And you choose warm light, yellow, soft, because white light reminds you of hospital nights. She swallowed hard. How do you know that? He replied quietly, Because he knows it too. Her shoulders sank. So he doesn't follow me. He follows my fear. Yes, Owen said softly. And fear leaves a cleaner trail than footprints. Shadow's ears twitched. He shifted his weight, nose lifting into the air. Something was changing. One of the agents whispered through Owen's earpiece. Movement. South walkway. Slow. Deliberate. Approaching target area. Lena's grip around Eli tightened. Owen stepped forward just slightly, hand near his weapon, but not drawing, not yet. Shadow stood, not growling, not bristling, just standing, like he recognized this moment. A figure emerged at the far end of the walkway. Tall, steady, moving with a confidence that did not match someone stalking from the shadows. Owen shifted his stance. His pulse quickened. "Stay behind me," he murmured. Lena tried to breathe as the silhouette approached, one measured step at a time. The figure reached the first pool of golden light beneath the lamp. A hood covered part of his face, but his jawline was sharp, his posture too precise to be casual. His gait was relaxed, not tense, not hurried, almost familiar. Lena whispered, Is that Miles?" Owen shook his head. "No. Miles walks differently, more calculated. This is someone else." Shadow took one step forward. The man stopped 10 feet away, lifted his head, and spoke in a calm, unnervingly conversational voice. "This time you arrived earlier than last time, Mercer." Owen froze, every muscle locked, the world silenced, because the man was speaking to him, and speaking as if they had met before. In a moment Owen had no memory of. Shadow growled, deep and vibrating. Lena's breath shattered into fear. "If you believe that God sometimes reveals truth at the exact moment we're strong enough to face it, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform for more stories of faith, courage, and miracles hidden in impossible places." Rain hammered the garden courtyard with violent force, turning the cobblestone walkway into a river of broken reflections. The man who had spoken to Owen, who had somehow known him, took one slow step backward as if inviting pursuit. Shadow exploded forward first, a blur of sable fur and instinct. His nails scraped the wet stone, paws splashing water into the air as he charged directly toward the intruder. The man did not run. He pivoted sharply and disappeared around the corner of the municipal building with unnatural speed, slipping into the storm as if he were part of it. "Shadow, hold!" Owen shouted, sprinting after him, boots slapping against waterlogged pavement. Lena clutched Eli to her chest, frozen on the bench, watching the scene unravel like a nightmare returning for its second act. Agents flooded in from both sides. Voices shouted, radios crackled, light beams sliced through the rain. Shadow reached the corner first and skidded, claws raking along concrete as he searched for the man's scent. But the storm washed everything away. Owen rounded the corner seconds later. Nothing. Just rain, thunder, and the hollow echo of footsteps that should not have vanished so quickly. Then a flash of movement. A dark object tossed from behind the hedge. Shadow lunged, intercepting it mid-air and pinning it to the ground with his paws. A small device. Metal. Humming. Owen's instincts screamed. "Shadow, back!" He grabbed the dog's harness and pulled him away, just as the device began to fizz, emitting a burst of sparks and a sharp chemical smell. A data wipe charge, the kind used to erase surveillance equipment or destroy evidence. But the man had miscalculated. When the agents swept the area minutes later, they found something beneath a nearby bench, a tiny camera, concealed within a broken pen casing. It had not been destroyed in time. Owen held it in his palm, rain dripping from his jawline, eyes narrowing with grim satisfaction. "Bag it," he ordered. "We may have something." Shadow stood beside him, chest heaving, fur soaked, ears scanning every sound. He pressed against Owen's leg, not in fear, but in readiness, as if he knew this was only the beginning. Back inside the safe house, the storm continued beating the windows as Owen connected the recovered device to a secure terminal. The screen flickered, rain-streaked light reflecting off his focused eyes. Lena sat on the couch with Eli asleep in her lap, the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. She watched Owen from across the room, not as a stranger anymore, but as someone whose presence had become the single solid place left in her collapsing world. The device loaded. Several corrupted files scrolled by. Then, one intact video. Owen hovered his cursor over it. Before he could open it, a new email appeared in his inbox. No sender, no traceable route. Just a subject line. For the one you couldn't save. Owen's breath stalled. His scarred eyebrow twitched. The words hit him like a blunt force, landing directly where his grief still lived, buried but breathing. Lena watched him closely. What is it? He shook his head once. Not yet. He clicked on the surveillance footage first. The video revealed shadows. Men moving in coordinated patterns, equipment being transferred, faces obscured deliberately. But then, a rooftop shot. Night vision. A tall figure standing on the edge of a building, watching something below. Owen froze the frame. The angle was poor, the distance too wide. But the man's posture, straight spine, relaxed arms, not hiding but observing, was identical to the one in the courtyard. Owen? Lena whispered. He leaned back slowly. He was scouting us. Scouting her, long before tonight. Shadow growled softly, eyes fixed on the frozen silhouette as if recognizing a predator in its most natural form. Shadow suddenly approached the monitor, nose pushing close to the screen. He inhaled, long, deliberate, then tilted his head and emitted a sound Owen had never heard from him before. Not a growl, not a whine. Something between warning and recognition, like remembering a ghost whose footsteps had never touched the ground. Lena clutched Eli tighter. Owen. Why does he react like that? But Owen didn't answer, because the dog's reaction confirmed something he feared. This enemy was not new, not random, not following. He was returning. Hours later, back at the bureau, breaking news arrived. An FBI tactical team operating in another state had raided a remote warehouse belonging to a trafficking network. The operation succeeded. Multiple captives were freed, and among the arrested, Miles Grant. Lena's knees weakened when she heard the name. Owen caught her shoulder before she fell. It's over, he said. But Lena shook her head violently. No, it isn't. Miles isn't the one who followed me tonight. Owen nodded once, slowly. I know. Agents reported that Miles seemed calm, eerily composed, almost relieved, but refused to speak a single word about a partner or handler. Something about his demeanor felt less like triumph and more like surrender. Shadow paced the office floor restlessly. Every shift of his paws sent a message Owen understood perfectly. The real threat is still out there. Back at the safe house, after agents cleared every corner again, after Lena finally put Eli down to rest, after the storm died into a thin mist, Owen sat alone at the table. The message still glowed on his device. For the one you couldn't save. His breath tightened. He hovered over the email and clicked. The screen went black. A soft electronic hum filled the room. Shadow lifted his head sharply, ears pricked. Lena turned from the hallway, eyes widening in fear. Owen! Then, the screen lit up. A dark room, a single overhead light, a figure sitting just outside the glow. Owen leaned closer, pulse pounding. Shadow moved to his side, teeth baring slowly. The figure shifted, leaned forward, and a face began to emerge. One Owen recognized instantly. A face he knew from memory, from nightmares, from a moment 3 years ago when a dying boy slipped through his hands. The screen flickered again, and the familiar voice whispered, "We're not done, Owen. If you believe God sends truth in the exact moment your heart is ready to withstand it, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform. for more stories of faith, courage, and miracles, rising in the darkest hours. The sun had barely risen when the Bureau's unmarked SUV rolled along the quiet suburban road, carrying Lena and Eli toward a new beginning. Morning light filtered through the leaves like a gentle promise, soft, golden, untouched by storm or fear. Lena held Eli close, kissing the top of his head again and again, as if memorizing a future she finally believed he might have. Her face, though still pale with exhaustion, carried a softness Owen hadn't seen before. A softness not born from safety, but from hope. At the safe transfer site, she stepped out of the vehicle slowly. A woman from the Bureau's Witness Protection Division greeted her. Agent Sarah Whitlock, early 40s, tall and slim with streaks of silver threading through her dark brown hair. Her steady hazel eyes and calm demeanor radiated a kind of maternal sternness. Firm, but undeniably gentle, she placed a hand on Lena's shoulder, guiding her toward a modest apartment whose windows glowed with warm light. Inside, Lena found groceries already stocked, soft blankets on the couch, a crib waiting for Eli in the bedroom. Everything carefully arranged, carefully chosen. Her breath trembled. This is more than I ever hoped for. Owen stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, Shadow sitting loyally by his side, his dark sable coat gleaming faintly under the lamp. Shadow tilted his head, watching Lena as if memorizing her scent. One last safeguard. She turned to Owen, her voice soft but steady. Because of you, my son will live to grow up. You saved him, Owen. You saved us both. He shook his head slowly. You did the hard part. You ran. Her eyes filled, though she tried to blink the tears away. If you hadn't stood between us and the storm, she whispered, we wouldn't be here. Shadow gave a gentle huff, pressing against Lena's leg before stepping back toward Owen. Their small, fragile pack had held, long enough to escape. Owen didn't know how to say goodbye, so Lena said it for him. Thank you, she whispered, for giving my son a chance to grow up in the light. She left a letter behind. Owen found it hours later on the kitchen table of the safe house, tucked beneath a folded blanket Eli had used. He opened it slowly, Shadow sitting beside him, ears lifted in quiet curiosity. Owen, the letter began, written in Lena's neat but shaking handwriting. I don't know what waits for us, but I know my son has a chance now. You said you were afraid of failing another child, but you didn't fail mine. He will live because you stood your ground, because you refused to run. I hope someday you forgive yourself. Light doesn't erase the past. It just gives you something to walk toward. Owen sat back, breath tight in his throat. He folded the letter with a care that bordered on reverence. Shadow nudged his elbow, then placed his head on Owen's knee. The unspoken message was clear. They weren't done. Not yet. The USB drive in the envelope held 2 files. Owen inserted it into his laptop. The first file was short, a grainy audio clip recorded by Lena during their first night together. The storm, Eli crying, and Owen's voice, steady, protective. It's okay, buddy. You're safe. I've got you. The recording was quiet, fragile, a moment never meant to leave that night. Owen felt his chest tighten. He remembered the weight of the child in his arms, the desperate fear in Lena's eyes. And something else. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, he had been allowed a second chance. He clicked on the second file. A video opened. Shaky at first. Recorded from a distance, as if Lena hadn't intended to capture anything important. It showed Shadow, standing guard in the diner parking lot the night they first met. Rain fell around him, glistening on his coat. He stood perfectly still, muscles coiled in silent vigilance, blocking the path between Lena and the darkness around her. Then the camera shifted slightly, and Owen's pulse froze. Behind Shadow, barely visible in the shadows, a man in a dark hood was standing motionless, watching Lena and her child. Not approaching, not speaking, just watching. A distorted voice crackled through the video, as if captured from a radio signal bleeding into the recording. "Don't lose them, like last time." Owen stiffened. Last time. The words pierced deeper than bullets. Shadow lifted his head sharply, ears pricking at the voice from the speakers. He stepped closer to the laptop, nose nearly touching the screen. The man in the video wasn't Miles. He wasn't any suspect they had identified. He was someone else entirely. Someone who had been there that night. Someone who had been there before that night. Shadow suddenly turned from the laptop and walked to the far corner of the room. He sat down facing the wall, tail still back straight, head tilted slightly, as if sensing a presence just beyond what human eyes could see. Owen followed slowly. Shadow lifted his paw and pressed it gently to the wall. Not scratching, not warning, just pointing, as if he understood something Owen hadn't yet learned, as if he knew where the darkness had gone. Hours passed after that, but Owen couldn't leave the table. The letter, the recordings, the shadowed figure, the voice saying, "Don't lose them." Every piece pulled him back to the same truth. Whoever was orchestrating this, whoever hid their hands behind Miles and the Omega Project, knew Owen, knew his past, knew the failure that had carved itself into his bones. Shadow rested his chin on Owen's thigh, watching him with eyes that held a lifetime of loyalty. Owen whispered, "I won't let it happen again, boy." The wall-mounted digital map of active cases flickered. A soft beep echoed through the room. A new tracking ping appeared on the screen. A single red dot. Moving, deliberate, heading toward a new location. Shadow rose instantly. His tail stiffened. A deep growl rumbled from his chest. Owen stood, sliding his badge into his belt holster. His voice became a whisper carried on determination. "If the darkness still hunts them, then we'll be the ones who hunt the darkness." The red dot blinked again and moved. If you believe God sends strength to those who rise against the shadows, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform for more stories of courage, faith, and miracles found in the storms we survive. In the quiet places of our lives, God often sends miracles disguised as ordinary people, unexpected moments, or a path we didn't know we needed to walk. Sometimes He guides us through storms not to test our strength, but to reveal it. And just as He watched over the characters in this story, may He watch over you in every step of your own journey. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who may need hope today. Leave a comment, subscribe to our channel, and may God's protection and His quiet miracles surround you and your loved ones always.